Through these disciplines, Christ opened for us a path that frees us from the disordered way of life that has become normal for many, even though their hearts and minds tell them otherwise. Please join me in exploring the three-legged stool of Orthodox spiritual practice: prayer, fasting, and almsgiving. Books now available at store.ancientfaith.com. And the title, once again, is Toolkit for Spiritual Growth. I look forward to sharing it with you. God bless.
Boldly proclaiming the truth of the risen Christ. This is Ancient Faith Radio, timeless Christianity, 24 hours a day.
It's time now for Stewardship Calling with your host, Bill Marianis. Bill is a stewardship evangelist whose Stewardship Calling ministry is focused on helping people, parishes, and Christian organizations discover and live their stewardship callings and embrace true stewardship and generosity so that they may have a good account before the awesome judgment seat of Christ. Here's Bill.
There was a very raggedy, old, sad, homeless-looking mess of a man begging for handouts on the ground of a resort in the sweltering Phoenix sun. He looked as though he had not had a haircut or shave for over 6 months. His clothes were tattered and filthy. His body swayed back and forth, and his tattooed hands shook uncontrollably. He never looked up or around. He was outside among people, but he seemed lost in a world of his own. Watching this, I was transfixed for over an hour. It was one of the most eye-opening experiences of my life. He sat on the dirt in the blazing heat of sunny summer Arizona day with no clouds to provide respite. The 90-plus degree temperatures were accompanied by unusual humidity for Phoenix. The heat reflecting off the ground made it nearly impossible to stand in one place for long without feeling scorched. Yet there he sat in a growing pool of his own sweat on this heat island, surrounded by an army of very small brown ants who seemed slightly annoyed that something that big and messy was in their midst. His hair was so long it covered his ears and his eyes, and it went down the back of his torn shirt. The beard that fully covered his face and mouth was also long and scraggly, and underneath that unkempt mess of a graying hair were unseen eyes that were covered by very dark and scratched sunglasses. And those clothes, or what was left of them, were so sad. A very torn and ripped shirt with gaping holes and paint and dirt splotches. And his hands were barely covered with ripped old mud-stained gloves. There were no coverings for his fingers that protruded from the long ago ripped and ragged tips. The rest of the cheap old gloves had tears and gaping holes from former battles and times past. A small portion of his arms were actually visible, where one could see several strange tattoos. One looked like a large snake crawling up his left arm, but with a dragon's head at the top. And the right arm had a scarier long snake crawling up a very sharp dagger that formed a cross at the handle. And on his wrist was a nondescript tattoo that looked as though it could have been a gang symbol, but it was hard to see given how much his hand shook. His sweat-stained and dirty long pants were horribly out of place in this baking heat. They were ragged, faded, and thin. And the very old shells of some kind of foot covering, if they could be called shoes, provided literally no padding. The dirt on them actually blended perfectly with the dirty ground on which this cross-legged beggar sat. But he couldn't sit still. He rocked back and forth and side to side, but there was no set pattern. It seemed totally random and unpredictable. The tremors in both hands were uncontrolled. Clearly, something appeared to be very wrong with him. Hundreds of people walked by him on their way to an outdoor breakfast feast. The beggar seemed planted into the ground just outside a beautifully manicured lawn in a high-end resort. How this shadowy wreck of a person snuck into the resort premises was actually a mystery. I later learned that several guests actually had called security to have him removed. After all, he was sitting at the edge of this elegant event with many tables that were featuring a cornucopia of great food and beverages. The guests were feasting in the shaded comfort of wide umbrellas for over an hour, but not so for our beggar. During that time, about 650 people passed by him, not once, but actually twice. First, to get to the beautiful shaded area where their wonderful food and each other's joyous company awaited them. These blessed humans passed him a second time as they re-entered the air-conditioned comfort of the expensive resort in order to work on what was actually a wonderful service project filling food boxes for the homeless. Ironically, the homeless-looking beggar was left where he apparently belonged, outside, looking in. I had a bird's-eye view of this spectacle and wondered about a lot of things. I especially wondered how many people actually spend their lives outside, looking in. During the entire event, almost no one stopped when they passed him, even though they couldn't miss his obvious and perhaps uncomfortable presence. I say almost because there were a few amazing exceptions. He had a dirty, beat-up baseball hat in front of him to accept whatever spare change and scraps from the table of abundance that anyone wanted to toss down to him. Out of the hundreds who passed, only 8 stopped to give this man any financial support. $1 each. $8 total in over 75 minutes. But the first one was the one that surprised me the most. It wasn't any of the successful guests staying at this exclusive resort where the room rates were several $100s a night and where a cup of coffee was $3. It was one of the servers, a nondescript laborer who was himself sweating in his clean hotel uniform as he cleaned the tables and replenished the trays of abundant food for the guests. He was the first to show generosity and hospitality, and his gift equaled the most generous of the other 7 who gave the homeless man any money. It was only $1. But for this working man, it was significant. Because of his exemplary generosity, it just fascinated me so much. I later tracked him down and asked him what his story was. He had spent a lot of his life outside looking in. He was an immigrant from Serbia. He was an Orthodox Christian. He didn't have much, but he and his family had been through a lot. He had seen people that looked just like this huddled man, someone that looked like him, that others that he knew in his family that just needed a little help. So he did what he could. And what he did was substantially more than the many hundreds of people who were richly blessed and merely passed by. There were 7 others who each dropped $1 in the hat. What was fascinating was that all of the 618 young adults in their 20s who were attending this church conference were given a crisp $1 bill in a sealed baggie when they registered. There was no explanation. There was a lot of speculation and more than one comment about it being a stimulus payment. Boy, doesn't that say a lot about the times we live in? Yet only 3 dropped the bagged dollar in the dirty hat of the beggar. I'm not sure what the other 615 or so did with their gift. What was striking as I watched in awe for the entire time was the parade of high-end fashionable clothes and shoes being worn by the guests passing the beggar. Imagine for a second what it was like for a man who never looked up and only looked at the very ground on which he was planted to see this onslaught of expensive footwear parading by, outside, looking in once again. Except this time, he was looking down, and perhaps he was also being looked down upon. The small amount of money contributed was one thing, but what was more uplifting was the generosity of 3 people who stopped and gave him something to eat or drink from the abundant meal spread before them. One young man shared a bottle of juice, another a small bottle of cold milk, but there was one person that was more amazing. I later learned that his name was Bob. I don't know much about Bob or his background, but by his actions, I know something about his heart and his upbringing. Bob actually stopped and stooped down and tried to speak to the ragged beggar who never looked up at him. Bob carefully placed a small croissant egg sandwich in his dirty gloved hands. He gave him 2 small baked goods that were wrapped in plastic bags for later, and he gave him a bottle of cold water. I even overheard Bob ask him if he needed anything else. But what was more amazing as I leaned in to listen was that Bob asked the beggar a very personal question. He asked him what was his name. Why did he want to know this poor man's name? I'll never know for sure. Perhaps Bob was raised right and he wanted to address this poor man with the same dignity by using his name. Perhaps Bob wanted to add this soul to his daily prayers. Maybe he thought, there but for the grace of God go I. And maybe, just maybe, Bob didn't see a mass of sweat and hair and dirt and ragged clothes. Perhaps Bob actually saw another person, a human made in the image and likeness as you and I were made, as all of humanity was made. I don't know what Bob was thinking, but I'd like to think Bob recognized a child of God, and he treated him as such, not like some unworthy random collection of shells to be shunned and avoided. You can wonder what Bob's story is, but you don't need to wonder who Bob is. Bob is a truly generous son of the Most High God. I know this because in that moment, when no one was watching but his Creator, and unbeknownst to him, me, Bob treated the least among us as if he was the first among us. God bless Bob. He treated this outsider as if he were inside. He apparently was actually inside Bob's heart. There was another beautiful person who stopped and shared a moment with this wretched soul. He happened to be a young priest. Now, other priests had passed by like the many hundreds of others who paid no attention to the huddled man on the side of their path forward. But this special priest approached the man from the side, perhaps not to startle him any more than his troubled soul was already impacted given the shaking that was going on. The clergyman placed a comforting hand very softly on his shoulder. And if you watch carefully, you could tell he was speaking to him as he handed him a cup of cold water to drink in order to quench what had to be burning thirst in the scorching sun of the now 94 degrees plus blazing sun. I overheard what this priest asked this victim of abandonment. This man of God asked the lowly servant of God if he had a safe place to stay. Imagine that. He was extending hospitality to make sure the beggar would be safe someplace when he laid down his head. Something else amazing happened. There was a professional photographer hired by the sponsor of the event who happened to be nearby. Well, he'd been shooting groups of conference attendees enjoying their meals and each other's company. This great photographer saw something that, well, you just don't see every day. So he stopped and discreetly snapped a photo of the moment that the priest was tending to the vagabond. What happened next was fascinating to me as a student of psychology. The young priest pulled the photographer aside and respectfully questioned him about capturing this tender act of service and humility and humanity in a photo. He wasn't sure what this photographer would do with that moment of time, but the priest didn't want that private exchange publicized or exploited for profit. Tenderness and caring are what this priest extended because it was the right thing to do, the human thing to do, the godly thing to do, but certainly not for any recognition or reward for himself. And he also didn't want the homeless man exploited. What compassion and love. I didn't record this man of God's name in this account. He knows who he is, and I know who he is. People seeing him do this or that see the uncensored photograph of him memorializing his generosity knows who he is. He knew this act of kindness was not about him. It was about helping someone in need. His mama would have been so proud to see this behavior. I know that his Father in heaven certainly was. His name is properly recorded as a, quote, good and faithful servant, end quote. May he receive the rich blessings to which he is deserving, and may his example inspire all of us. As the heat and the glaring sun grew more intense, the homeless-looking man seemed to melt even closer to the ground, as if to kind of extract any coolness from the wet soil underneath him. And then it happened. I didn't know what it was at first, but it was striking and unsettling once it began. All of a sudden, the beggar began to convulse and slap at his hands and his arms and his feet and even roll to his side as he swatted vigorously. It took me a while to realize what was happening. He'd been sitting on the ground, surrounded by what looked like hundreds of extremely small brown ants that didn't seem to bother him. It's almost as if those small brown ants recognized him as part of the same earth that was their home. But after he rolled over and was swatting so vigorously, I could see that there was a new swarm of large black ants that had converged on the ground where he sat. Apparently, as he tried to eat that piece of bread given to him by Bob, scraps of food fell from his trembling hands and heavily bearded mouth. These bread scraps had attracted the swarm of very aggressive and hungry black ants. And these hungry predators apparently chose not to differentiate between the real food scraps and the flesh of this humble man. The biting and swatting continued for about 5 minutes, even after he had rolled over to a patch of sun-drenched ground slightly farther away from the crumbs. He used his fingerprints that protruded from his torn gloves to pick off the biting ants from his hands, arms, and legs, and eventually the predators seemed to abandon their human meal. But I could see that the bites on his arms were starting to swell and itch. He scratched them or pressed on him to relieve the irritation and pain they caused. Now, he may not have been smart enough to prevent whatever happened to him in his life, but he was wise enough to place on the ground about a foot away a small broken piece of the bread that he'd been eating. This bait seemed to attract all the predator ants so that he could remain as a beggar on this new patch of ground relatively undisturbed. He only had a small scrap of food left, but he shared it with other of God's creatures. I'm not sure how homeless people treat bites or other injuries. There was no medicine or urgent care facility nearby or telemedicine visit available. No doctor stopped by to tend him, although I was told there were medical professionals in attendance. So perhaps it's left to the human body to defend and protect as best it can. Or maybe God protects even his most broken-looking people that are outside looking in on the very blessed life that most people have in this great country. The saga unfolded for over about 75 minutes. Now, that's not a long time in the scheme of life. We often wait that long for a restaurant reservation or a favorite concert or program or sporting event to begin. It certainly takes us that long to enjoy a good breakfast, as it did that day for those blessed adults and older folks and clergy. But during this time in our beggar's life, while he was on the outside looking in, I started to wonder. I wondered about this man's life. His long gray beard showed he must have endured many decades. What was his story? What had he seen? Who had he loved? Who had loved him? What had he lost? Who had he lost? What great things had he done? What things had occurred that brought him to this point where he sat in the rags, in the extreme heat, begging for whatever scraps would be tossed his and the ants' way by those walking by him in shoes that cost hundreds of dollars? What trauma had he seen? What depression had he experienced? What was causing his hands and body to tremble? Why did he never look up? How long had he been on the outside looking in? There was an amazing story happening right before everybody's eyes, and I wondered who had observed it. I was transfixed and memorized. I wondered how many times a day, in how many places throughout the world, this exact scene is replicated. I wondered what happened to those people. I wondered why more of those who passed by either didn't see him or didn't stop to offer any help. I wondered if we sometimes even see the world around us or the needs of others. I wondered if we all are sometimes outside looking in, but not really seeing. I wondered if any of us can make a difference. If not for the whole world, perhaps at least for the world of one person, one at a time. I wondered, what did this true story about our humanity and our love and our care for each other mean? In a period of time of just more than an hour, I was outside trying to look in. And in that time, I finally, for the first time, think I better understood the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 25, verses 35 for 40. Later that afternoon, I actually had the opportunity to address all 618 young adults and 50 other adults who were there, most of whom had ignored the beggar who was on the outside looking in. I actually asked them a paraphrased question from Matthew 25, verses 35 for 40. I was hungry. Did you give me something to eat? I was thirsty. Did you give me something to drink? I was a stranger. Did you invite me in? I needed clothes. Did you clothe me? I looked sick. Did you care for me? I looked like I was in a prison. Did you visit me? Whatever you do for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me, reminded us. The Lord said, yes, I asked everyone the above questions because on that day, I was that beggar. I was also the keynote speaker at this conference of faithful Christian young adult leaders. I was charged with opening their eyes to find their why, to share the love, to be the light of the world as they became disciples of Jesus Christ where they lived. For 6 months before then, I neither shaved nor cut my hair. I scoured and found the worst and most ragged clothes I could find. I applied scary fake tattoos on my arms. And for weeks preceding this teachable moment, I tried to prepare myself for this very small act of ministry. This was hard. This was very hard for me because I'm very blessed. I'm blessed well beyond how much this sinful and unworthy servant deserves to be blessed. I'm blessed enough to easily give each one of these 618 adults $1 in their swag bags without even thinking about it. Now, for much of my life, I too was on the outside looking in, but no more. Now I'm almost always inside, but not looking outside carefully enough. No matter how hard I prepared my mind for this brief role, I couldn't anticipate how I would feel. I didn't appreciate the complete loneliness I would experience, even though I was surrounded by many beautiful people and much beauty. I didn't anticipate how hot, dehydrated, and hungry I would be. I didn't anticipate how it would feel to only see very expensive shoes walking by as those who wore them ignored someone without nice shoes. I didn't anticipate the ants. I didn't anticipate how much their bites would hurt and how long the welts would last on my skin. But none of that was as bad as the pain of feeling totally ignored and neglected, completely outside, trying to look in. For me, it was only 75 minutes. After many months of preparation. For others, it's their life. And in that moment of realization, my heart broke. When have you been on the outside looking in? Do you feel that way now, in the divisive times in which we live? Are you suffering from grief or depression or anxiety or a loss? Do you sometimes feel like you are too far outside and can't even begin to know where to look in? Look, COVID is a serious disease, but thankfully there are vaccines and therapeutics that can treat it. For many of the diseases around us, illnesses we experience, or mistakes we make in our lives, there are not fixes, treatments, or support groups. But there is one miracle cure and treatment option that you possess. Everyone possesses it, and when you share it, you get even more in return. My brothers and sisters, you are a child of a loving God. You are made in his image and likeness, and you possess your humanity and free will. The exercise of that humanity and free will as you share the love with one person at a time is one of the most effective medicines one could offer or receive. You can make a difference by serving and extending love, even if only to one person. I met these wonderful people. I dressed after my keynote address. They're truly fantastic. I felt so blessed to be in their presence. They will do great things. Many of them were moved to tears. Others seemed ashamed. Some may have even been angry. I lost count of how many told me they were convicted by what they'd just experienced. Yet others didn't know how to process or express what just happened. But they all seemed to get it. I hope they never forget it. I know I won't. How about you? Just a couple of weeks ago, over 2 months after this event, I was in a city in the Midwest taking a parish through strategic planning. I attended church there on Sunday, and a stranger, total stranger, came up to me and said that while he was not there in Phoenix, he'd heard about it and read this testimonial about my experience as a beggar. And he told me that he was so convicted that since then, he has stopped to buy food for a beggar who routinely sat outside his favorite fast food restaurant. He said he would never again ignore those in need, those on the outside looking in. I wonder how many times people will now think about those who are outside looking in because they heard this personal testimonial. I pray it helps motivate all of us to be better Christians and to serve those that are less fortunate. I know I need that consistent reminder. I've heard others tell me that they're hesitant to share any of their money with beggars or homeless that they encounter. They often say that they're not sure what the homeless person will do with the money. They wonder if he or she might buy alcohol or drugs. I understand. That's a distinct possibility. But I see their faces change when I ask them if God is as conditional with his gifts to them. When they misuse something they were given, or if they did something bad, did God deprive them of food or water or even the funds to spend on whatever bad habits they had? No, they sheepishly respond. They get it. So after that realization, the question remains, who are we to place conditions onto whom we will extend much needed generosity? If we can help someone, why wouldn't we? I'm not sure why we somehow feel we have the duty or right to interview or vet those in need who are on the outside looking in, as if somehow to qualify them or judge if they're worthy to spend the time or the resources that we might share with them in a way that might be pleasing to us. Your Creator, who gives you everything, is not so conditional with you. Regardless of your good deeds or misdeeds, your loving Father bestows endless blessings on you. Indeed, our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ shared the parable of the Good Samaritan to model the complete lack of judgment we should have when we are given the opportunity to serve someone, anyone in need. See, in those days, Samaritans and Jews were essentially prohibited from interacting in any real way, and yet, much to the chagrin of his Jewish audience, in the parable, our Lord makes the Samaritan the good guy who helps an injured and damaged Jew without regard to what the Jew did to put himself in that position. And it's at the end of that parable in Luke 10:37 where Christ merely admonishes all of us to, quote, go and do likewise, end quote, in service to all those in need, to serve and share with others unconditionally without judgment, just like your Creator does with you. Go and do likewise. Simple words. how often do we simply ignore them? On that Labor Day weekend in Phoenix, I discovered that these people who saw and heard a homeless-looking beggar were wonderful and beautiful and caring souls, good Orthodox Christians from 42 different states, with many stories of their own, some happy, some tragic, and some heartbreaking. Some of them shared their stories of sorrow with me, and my heart broke again and again. These are good people, truly good people. It's just that on that morning, their eyes were not fully open to see what was right before them, something ugly and unpleasant, a wreck of a person on the outside trying to look in. I was an alone, homeless-looking beggar for just 75 minutes. But during that time, the beautiful warmth of the Serbian worker, Bob, the humble Greek Orthodox priest, and the generosity of a few people was a powerful antidote to the bug bites, the sweltering heat, the hunger, the thirst, and the loneliness of being in a personal prison on the outside looking in. What I learned that I tried to share in my keynote address a few hours later was that you, indeed every one of us, really can share the love of Christ and be the light of the world as we live our stewardship callings, what we're called to do with all of the gifts we've been given. When you do these things, especially to the least among us, you bring those who are stuck outside into the warmth and joy of a loving, faithful community of believers. On that day, I reminded everyone that they see God countless times every day. When they see each other, they see the image and likeness of the God that created everyone. Every time they look in the mirror, they see the image and likeness of God who created them. And I beg them, and now I beg you, that the next time, instead of seeing a ragged old beggar, homeless-looking person in rags who had gone 6 months without a haircut or shave, perhaps we can see the image and likeness of the same God who made us, and that person who is now on the outside looking in. You can always show your humanity and love to all of God's creatures and creation. And when you do, you will one day hear, "Well done, good and faithful servant." In serving the least of your brothers and sisters, you allow them to no longer be on the outside looking in, because you are the light of the world. All glory to God. Welcome, brothers and sisters, to Stewardship Calling in the first Wednesday series on Ancient Faith Radio. This is Bill Marianis from stewardshipcalling.com and Orthodox Ministry Services, coming to you from the shores of beautiful Lake Lanier in Gainesville, Georgia, just north of Atlanta. I have a simple premise that you have been called by your Creator to a personal calling, a reason to your life and a reason for your life, something you need to do with all of the gifts over which God has made you a steward. It's what I call your stewardship calling. And it's St. Paul that makes it so crystal clear that we all have a calling. In his letter to the Ephesians chapter 4, verse 1, he clearly states, "I beg you to lead a life worthy of the calling to which you have been called." Until 2017, by day, I was blessed to be a partner in two great international law firms of over 1,100 lawyers each, where I served in management, including as a managing partner of our Atlanta office, and practiced in the area of mergers and acquisitions and corporate law. But my personal calling is to be a stewardship calling evangelist. I'm here to help people in parishes discover and live their stewardship callings so that they may one day have a good account before the awesome judgment seat of Christ. In this program and a lot of other hopefully helpful tools and information about effective churches and stewardship and church strategic planning and servant leadership and other topics can be found at my always free website, stewardshipcalling.com, and you can reach me at bill@stewardshipcalling.com. If you want to see how bad I looked on that fateful day in Phoenix, I've even posted some images on my Stewardship Calling website under the podcast tab for today's date of November 3rd, 2020. Perhaps next time you see someone who looks like that, you too will see the image and likeness of God. And to all of our listeners tonight, we want you to call in by interacting with us and any of my four special guests who I'll introduce shortly. You can call at 1-855-AF-RADIO. That's 1-855-237-2346. So we're going to take a short break right now, and when I return, I'll introduce the first of my four special guests, Father Justin Matthews and Chrysanthi Luizos, Dore Papadimitriou, and Jennifer Hertberg, as we discuss the challenges of the homeless and those who are on the outside looking in and what we can do to help them. So let's take a short break right now.
Bill will be right back, but the lines are open if you want to ask a question or offer your thoughts. The number is 855-237-2346. That's 855-AF-RADIO.
Big in Heaven, a collection of short stories available now on the Ancient Faith bookstore. Sometimes poignant, sometimes funny, sometimes heartbreaking, sometimes convicting. These stories of life in an inner-city immigrant Orthodox parish are guaranteed to shake your assumptions and make you see your life and faith in a new way. They are not for the faint of heart, but they are very much for all who want to embrace the truth more fully.
And you didn't have to ask Ruskova for help. Cleaning, polishing, carrying in or out. Any work in the church, the woman was a stalwart, a tovarish you could count on. No one knew her suffering. They never bothered to look into her eyes. It surprised me that most of the church folks at St. Alexander the Whirling Dervish Parish didn't even know her name. It wasn't anything they thought about.
To find this book and others like it, you can go to store.ancientfaith.com. Again, that is store.ancientfaith.com.
Stewardship Calling is back, and we are ready for your call at 855-237-2346. That's 855-AF-RADIO. Here again is Bill Marianis.
Welcome back to Stewardship Calling and our first Wednesday program. And again, please remember, we'd love to hear from you by calling at 1-855-AF-RADIO. That's 1-855-237-2346. You know, before COVID began in January of 2020, there were an estimated 581,000 people experiencing homelessness in America. 70% of them were individuals, which means a full 30% of the homeless were people living in families with children. And they were in every state and every territory, and they reflected the vast diversity of our country. Approximately 26% of the homeless adults were staying in shelters live with serious mental illnesses or dealing with grief. And depression is the leading cause of disability worldwide, where nearly 10 million adults in America live with a serious mental illness. And shockingly, if you will, 1/2 of all the chronic mental illness begins before the age of 14 and 3/4 by the age of 24. But given this harsh empirical data, there are people in our community who are doing great and amazing things to serve those in need. And my first guest, Father Justin Matthews, is one of them. He's a Kansas City native with over 25 years of experience in developing and executing successful strategies for social mission-driven organizations. Currently, he serves as Executive Director of Reconciliation Services, which is a nonprofit located at 31st and Troost, the historical, racial, and economic dividing line in Kansas City, Missouri. The mission of Reconciliation Services is to cultivate a community seeking reconciliation, to transform Troost from a dividing line into a gathering place and reveal the strength of all. In 2018, Father Justin led the Reconciliation Services team in the launch of Thelma's Kitchen, a 5-star Yelp-rated social venture, donate what you can cafe and box lunch catering company in Kansas City. Father Justin is also the founder and a board member of RS Social Ventures, a for-profit social venture working to create living wage jobs that are accessible to public transit and offer a trauma-informed approach and help scale and sustain the work of Reconciliation Services. In 2020, Father Justin and Reconciliation Services received the Greater Kansas City Chamber of Commerce ACE Award and the 2020 Excellence in Impact Award from the nonprofit Connect. Previously, Father Justin was the founding executive director of Focus North America, the executive director of the Heartland Orthodox Christian Council and Museum, vice president of development and communications for the Nashville Rescue Mission. But proving that he is the Renaissance man, in his earlier life, Father Justin moved to Nashville, Tennessee as a songwriter and performing artist, signed to a production label in the early 20s. He then attended Belmont University, where he graduated cum laude with a BA in business and an emphasis in audio engineering. In 2007, Father Justin earned the Master in Divinity from St. Vladimir's Orthodox Theological Seminary and was ordained to the priesthood shortly. Father Justin, it is finally so great to speak with you again, and I want to welcome you to Stewardship Calling on Ancient Faith Radio.
It's an honor to be with you, and thank you for the incredible testimony you shared at the beginning of the show. It was very moving. Thank you.
Well, thank you. All glory to God for that, my friend. Now, I'd like you to share with our listeners a little bit about your personal journey and how you got to your current position, because you have such an amazing story.
Yeah, you know, I think all of us, as you said, we all are called by God to do something. And each of us has this vocation of seeking Christ to figure out what our vocation is going to be. what has he given us to do in this world for him, for the upbuilding of the church and to his glory. And, every season of our life is a little bit different. So as you mentioned, I started out in my early 20s in the Christian music industry, and that was right about the time that I was converting to Orthodoxy in Nashville, Tennessee, and went on from there and really was fascinated with entrepreneurship and just the ways that we can engage in the marketplace of ideas as Christians, as the church, and how we can do that sustainably in the entrepreneurial world. And then I fell in love with the nonprofit world. And my first job at the Nashville Rescue Mission, I remember I was hired by a guy named Clay Huddleston, who's still one of my mentors. He was a retired Fortune 500 CFO out of Memphis who just took me under wing and taught me so much about how to lead and so much about what life was really about, not by his business skill, but by the way that he had dedicated his life in his retirement to be the CFO for free for a $4 million a year rescue mission serving 1,000 people. And Clay lived it and still lives it today. And so my journey has kind of gone from music into entrepreneurship, into the nonprofit world. And then eventually in my 30s, I was really honored to get accepted into St. Vladimir Seminary, where my wife and I and our 3 children just loved that experience, learned so much. I got to intern with dear friends as a new priest, and then was sent out to be a priest. And I was a priest in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, with Father Stephen Freeman for a couple of years, and eventually found my way back into Kansas City and into the nonprofit world and into the church ministry world. Just trying to do anything I can do to try to have a unified vision. How do I take these things that God has given and bring them to God's glory in one unified vision of how to serve God as a whole person with all the creativity that he's given to his glory, as well as with all the drive and the passion. And it's hard to do. I think finding your vocation and finding your way, finding your thing, your way of serving the Lord is really, really hard to do. But I think it's some of our most important work. You don't have to do it just in your 20s. I think it's something that we do continually every day as a part of our practice of prayer. We get up every day and say, Lord, how can I serve you today? And how can I use what you've given me to try to magnify and glorify you and to upbuild your church for the glory of God? So this journey has been an interesting one. It's not over yet. Lots ahead, I pray.
I hope not. You're still young. You got a long way to go.
My kids are keeping me young. They're all teenagers still, 19, 17, and 14. So I'm more tired than I was back then. But it's a joy. It's a joy for sure.
Well, they will tire you out and they will age you. But I think, among the incredible messages that I hope people hear from your beautiful testimonial is the various different chapters and phases of your life, in geographies, in vocations and activities that you did, in different ways that you pursued the journey. And I think you always had this kind of north compass, north pointed view towards the Lord. But I mean, no matter where you are in your journey, there's a next step, there's a next part of the journey. And I think that's your story is just a beautiful story that tells it. Now, in the meantime, what you're doing now is absolutely incredible. And if anybody has never been to reconciliation services in Kansas City, I don't care what you have to do. You need to get there and you need to see this amazing, amazing ministry. So, Father, would you please share with the listeners some of the incredible work that Reconciliation Services does to help the homeless and those in need, and in fact, the whole city of Kansas City?
Absolutely. Well, Reconciliation Services was founded by Matushka Michaela Thelma Alschult and her husband, Hieromonk Alexei Alschult. And Michaela passed away, blessed memory, in 2013, and Father Alexei became Hieromonk Alexei after that. But the work that they began is what I have the charge of stewarding. And they were an amazing couple, Bill. You couldn't find two more opposite people. She was 5 foot tall, African-American, and from the segregated part of Texarkana, Arkansas, and was living in a low-income apartment in Kansas City. But she was a minister of the Lord. She used to go out at 2 a.m, Thelma did, and bring the homeless and bring the poor and the hungry and prostitutes into her apartment and feed them from her kitchen. And then one day, by God's providence, she met a man who was definitely on a spiritual journey. His name at the time was David Altschulte. And David and Thelma began a food ministry together that they called Grace's Kitchen. And of course, I'm condensing the story, but by God's providence, David was like totally her opposite. He's 6 foot plus and, white, and grew up in a kind of an affluent part of Kansas City. I mean, you just couldn't have found two more opposite people. But by God's providence, David and Thelma fell in love. And when they fell in love and got married, they formed a ministry called Reconciliation Ministries. And 30 years later, what's come out of Reconciliation Ministries is an Orthodox Christian community in the inner city of Kansas City and Reconciliation Services, which is a 501c3 nonprofit that now serves over 4,000 people every year in Kansas City. And really, reconciliation is our guiding framework, our ultimate vision and mission. Because if you look at the founding of our organization, black and white, rich and poor, from different geographies, there was true reconciliation happening. But not only that, there was reconciliation with God, this idea of how do I serve you, Lord, today? And how do I, in spite of my sins, become reconciled to you? And that's why we call, the service of repentance, we also call the service of reconciliation. And so this whole ministry that they began took on a life and has just grown. We do work called Thelma's Kitchen in Thelma's honor. Thelma's is Kansas City's first Donate What You Can cafe. Now, as a result of COVID, we now are a box lunch company. And so we still do Donate What You Can at the window. The way that works is if somebody can't afford lunch that day, they walk up and they can either use one of our tokens, which our case managers give, and our partners across the city give, or if they're a client, they can get one of those tokens, or they can actually volunteer their time when the restaurant was open in exchange for a meal, or they donate what you can. And really what we believe in, Bill, is this idea of the dignity of radical participation. So
wait, say that again. Wait. This is such a powerful message. I want to make sure that everyone got that phrase.
Yeah, what we really believe in Thelma's Kitchen is the dignity of radical participation. And so someone may not have money to give, but that doesn't mean that they don't come with value. That doesn't mean they just need a handout. Everybody has something of value, even if it's just their presence, right? So when people come, when Thelma's Kitchen was open as a restaurant before COVID, you could come in and you could volunteer your time for 20 to 30 minutes, help us run the restaurant, clean tables, wash windows, do whatever it took, and you could earn your lunch that day. And we had people that considered themselves staff. They came every day. This was their home. This is where they participated. They had a place that was theirs that they ran. But you also have people that can donate what they can. And really, we ask everybody to donate a minimum of $3. And the suggested full retail price is $11 or $12. So let's say your law firm back in the day was having a meeting. Your law firm would go to thelmaskitchen.org. You guys would order lunch for your entire crew, and you would pay the full price. But if you came to the window and if you weren't able to pay the full price, you could donate $3 or use one of the pay it forward tokens from one of our folks. And then that way everybody eats. But we are not a soup kitchen. And this is a really interesting part of the puzzle, right? There are 17 free meals in Kansas City, all around Kansas City. Getting access to free food isn't the issue. What we're addressing is not so much food insecurity as nutritional insecurity. How do I, who am a diabetic, access specialty diets if all I eat is out of a pantry? How do I, if all I have is the rescue mission, how do I access dependably nutritious, affordable food for myself, for my family? And by the way, kids under 17 always eat free every day. So this model that we created was a social venture. In other words, we want to generate income from it while we also are addressing, for those who need it, the nutritional and the food insecurity issues. So, thankfully, this effort, Thelma's Box Lunch, and you can go check it out at thelmaskitchen.org, it's now in the black. It generates revenue, and it allows us not only to address the food insecurity in the community, but to plow and to sow back into the rest of what we do. And I know time is short, so I'll just barely touch on those. But we work with over 4,000 people a year, and we deliver social and mental health services. And I'm not talking about just sort of counseling. I'm saying we offer clinical, evidence-based, master's-level trauma therapy into the community that is donor-sponsored. And we go even further because 72% of our neighbors are African-American that we serve. We prioritize hiring Black therapists because we have to address not only the economic boundaries that are there, but also the history of discrimination and the racial boundaries that are there. And that goes all the way back to our founding and our location in the city. So from Thelma's Kitchen to Reveal social and mental health services, to even work that we do called the Social Leader Program, where we teach folks in the civic and the business community about bias, about trauma, and how to think with a social entrepreneurial mindset. All of our work is around that guiding framework of reconciliation, which is our ultimate vision and mission, one heart at a time.
This, I mean, this is such a powerful ministry, and you do so many other things, and I don't want to rush you through it. So one of the things that first caught my attention when I first was introduced to you was the foster grandparents program. And I don't know if you're still able to do that in the COVID period.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about the foster grandparents program, because I think that too is another incredible innovation that is so powerful.
Yeah, this is actually a 50-year-old war on poverty program that we sponsor for Jackson, Clay, and Platte counties in Kansas City. And it's through the foster grandparents program that we recruit, train, and mobilize senior adults who live 200% below the federal poverty level. So they're having a really hard time living on what they have. We recruit and deploy them as volunteers in order to mentor, tutor, and offer love and emotional support for kids, primarily school-age kids, in 30 different schools. So imagine an army of 80 very low-income seniors. But I'll tell you a story. One of them, Miss Benson, she actually is in a wheelchair, but she walked across the bridge in Selma with MLK.
Oh,
she has
boy.
such rich life history, such wisdom, such experience, and yet, she's really struggling to survive and succeed. Well, what we do is we work with Miss Benson to train her, to mobilize her, and then we pair her up with kids in the community that have exceptional needs and are struggling in schools. And so while our focus is on the foster grandparents and really helping them thrive and succeed, the kids are the beneficiaries of all that love. And I don't know about you, but I'd love to have had my grandma with me in fifth grade in class. That would have been great. Fifth grade, sixth grade could be hard. So it's like a love army in the community. They're doing incredible work. That's the foster grandparents program.
Yeah, I think that's such a powerful thing. I mean, one of the things when you look at just sheer numbers, I know it's easy to get wrapped up in numbers, right? So, I mean, looking at what you all had been able to accomplish, if I understand it correctly, that just in 2020, a COVID year, right, you were able to accomplish over 2,600 hours of therapy and case management. As you mentioned, over 4,000 clients that were served. The staggering number to me is 25,963. I mean, somebody's counting very precisely in your organization, but 26,000 lunches served in Thelma's Kitchen during a COVID year. And then the other thing that I think is really powerful that I learned when I was doing intake at a homeless shelter was that you provided over 1,000 IDs and documents to people that needed that. And I want to share a little bit about that and its importance in how we break through some of the chains that bind people.
Yeah, so IDs, and by that I mean sort of state-issued ID or birth certificates. Those IDs are something that we take for granted. Bill, in our context, in a first world context, there's really not much that is like or akin to drilling a well in a third world country. When you drill a well in a third world country, you open up agriculture and hygiene and a whole well of possibilities. But in the United States, there aren't many things that are like that. But I would argue that having the ability to have ID is that. Because when you get an ID, that deep well of possibility opens up. And I'm talking about getting jobs, getting housing, the dignity of proving who you are when you need to, being able in some states to vote. Those things that we often take for granted because we have that little piece of plastic in our purse or in our wallet, our neighbors in need, particularly those that are working poor and homeless, really struggle to obtain. So we focused on that, and it takes an hour to 2 hours per client. So you're talking around $80 for case management for a couple of hours, plus $25 on average for a document and a birth certificate for one individual. So let's just round and say $100. There isn't a government program that's paying for that. We're raising, $100 per person, putting in the time. People would say, well, why can't you get an ID? What's the problem? Well, here's the problem. If you don't have a state ID, Or if you don't have your birth certificate, you can't get the other. You have to have two forms of valid ID to get a replacement for one that you've lost. It's a really bad catch-22. Plus, you layer onto that, I might be working two jobs. I have kids in daycare. I don't have a car. I'm dependent on public transit. Maybe I have literacy issues. Maybe I have English language issues. Those all compound and keep our neighbors from the basic dignities that we all take for granted. But that one piece of plastic can be the starting point for a brand new trajectory in life. And so we've really focused on that. And I think we're probably one of the largest, if not the largest, in the Kansas City region doing that work, particularly to help people thrive and succeed.
Well, listen, there are so many incredible things that this ministry that you have stewarded so incredibly well. We could probably talk about for 3 hours, including having created an Orthodox church in that area that I was blessed to see and participate in, and just seeing the joy, the sheer joy of the people back in the day when they were coming in and out of the building in the Thelma's Kitchen area and things of that nature. That I hope and pray that you can reopen and create that sense of communal vigor that really shows the likeness that we are all made in God's image and likeness, regardless of status and origin and things of that nature. Okay, before we go, though, I've got to ask you, how can any of the listeners that are interested connect with any of your ministry or offer any support or assistance? What are some of the ways that they can connect with you and help support this incredible work that you're doing at Reconciliation Services?
Absolutely. First of all, please pray for us. We are connected to the Orthodox Christian Church because of our founding, because I'm a priest, because we have many Orthodox volunteers, but we also work in the whole community. We serve everybody and anybody. And so we need prayer. We need the strength that only comes from prayer. So please add Reconciliation Services to your morning or your evening prayers and pray for us. Second of all, please follow us on social media. You can follow Reconciliation Services and Thelma's Kitchen on whatever platform you're on, particularly Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook. We're really active on those. And lastly, if you want to help us to build this ministry, and if you want to help us in particular right now to reach those who are most in need, we have a long way to go between now and the end of the year because the need is so great. Bill, we have so many people coming to us who are struggling with rent and evictions issues, so many people right now in the wake of COVID. So please, if you would go to rs3101.org/donate, rs3101.org/donate, or just Google Reconciliation Services. You can make a donation and join our mailing list. Any gift of any size makes a huge difference, especially right now.
Yeah, and I think they're easy to find on the internet. The RS, of course, stands for Reconciliation Services, and the 3101 is their address on Truce. So it's an easy way to keep track of where they are. But I will tell you, having been there, having visited it, having seen it, having touched or having listened to people, how this ministry has touched them, I sincerely hope that people will look at huge opportunities to help those who may be on the outside looking in right now actually be on the inside. Father Justin, thank you so much for everything you do. You remain in our prayers, and God bless you for the incredible, incredible work you're doing as a good and faithful servant of our Lord.
Pray for me, Senator. Thank you so much for the opportunity, Bill.
God bless. All right, we're going to take another short break right now. And when we return, we're going to continue this amazing cavalcade of ministries that are serving these people. And I'm going to introduce you to Crisanti Luizos, who's, we're going to discuss some of the challenges and homeless issues and people that she's working at through the incredible ministry that she's associated with at St. Herman House. So let's take a short break right now, and we'll be right back.
Bill will be right back. But the lines are open if you want to ask a question or offer your thoughts. The number is 855-237-2346. That's 855-AF-RADIO.
No end of books these days offer us techniques for self-improvement. But in the newest release from the Ancient Faith store, Gratitude in Life's Trenches, Robin Phillips takes a different tack. He shows us that God meets us where we are, in the pain and heartache of the present moment. Instead of looking for a way to escape from hardship, we can cultivate an attitude of gratitude, peace, and self-acceptance that will transform our experience of suffering. Drawing on his own experiences and his work as a consultant in the behavioral health industry, as well as stories of saints and sufferers, teachings of the fathers, and recent discoveries in neuroscience, Phillips shows us that the journey to personal well-being is one we can all travel, regardless of the hardships we may face. To find this book and others like it, you can go to store.ancientfaith.com. Again, that is store.ancientfaith.com.
Stewardship Calling is back, and we are ready for your call at 855-237-2346. That's 855-AF-RADIO. Here again is Bill Marianis.
Welcome back to Stewardship Calling in our first Wednesday program, where my upcoming special guest, Crisanti Luizos, and I are going to start to discuss even a greater depth of some of the challenges that are being faced by homeless people and other people who are on the outside looking in. Please remember that we'd love to hear from any of you. If you have any questions, feel free to call in at 1-855-AF-RADIO. That's 1-855-237-2346. Now, Crisanti is the assistant director of St. Herman House, Focus Cleveland, an Orthodox men's shelter that's founded obviously in the Cleveland, Ohio area, but it was founded in 1977. Crisanti is actually known by her friend as just Santi. So if you hear me going back and forth, you'll understand why. But she actually began her career in the nonprofit sector about 25 years ago and you would never know that by looking at her. She looks so young. But anyway, with a focus on humanitarian relief and development. In her many previous roles, she managed programs for International Orthodox Christian Charities in Greece and in the Republic of Georgia, not the state of Georgia, just in case you were wondering. She worked on resettling refugees in the United States. And Santi has also done extensive communications work for a large number of Orthodox nonprofits. For example, she currently serves with me on the Secretariat of the Assembly of Canonical Orthodox Bishops, and she is the one who is so instrumental in writing the information and the releases about what they're doing. She's also a freelance writer and has been adjunct faculty at Kent State University. She has a bachelor's of history from American University and a master's in conflict analysis and resolution. We really need to understand what that's all about, because she's the least conflicting person you'd ever want to meet. But anyway, from George Mason University. So Santi, it's so great to speak with you again, and I'd like to welcome you to Stewardship Calling on Ancient Faith Radio.
Thank you so much, Bill. It's an honor to be here. Thank you for including me.
Well, we couldn't have a program on this without talking about the incredible work that y'all are doing up at St. Herman House. So before we get into that, what I really want you to start with is share with the listeners something about your incredible personal journey and how you got to your current position. And I don't want you to skip over some of the incredible things that you've accomplished in your life to help people.
Well, I think that, to some extent, I really did fall into the nonprofit sector. I was in my 20s and living in Washington, D.C., and got a temp job at a nonprofit. And that really, I think that I already had a call to serve people, but that really awakened an interest. And I think what was something that was really fundamental in, my career was the opportunity to work with IOCC.
Again,
that was
for those
my
of you not
first,
familiar, that's International Orthodox Christian Charities.
Yes.
Right. I'm sorry.
And I was exposed to IOCC. Actually, I attended a fundraising banquet probably 20 years ago for IOCC, and I heard the speaker talking about his experiences working for IOCC and living abroad. And I looked at my sister and I said, I want to do that. And by the grace of God, I had the opportunity to work for IOCC for a number of years in different locations. And it was just a blessing to work alongside Orthodox colleagues. I had never experienced that before. I had sort of been in my, I would say, my ethnic Orthodox bubble. But having an opportunity to work alongside Orthodox colleagues from different jurisdictions and converts, and to be exposed to the Orthodox Church in other countries was really, really phenomenal. And that was about 13 or 14 years ago. And by the grace of God, I've just had an opportunity to sort of stay in an Orthodox work world since then. I'm originally from Cleveland, and I moved back to Cleveland about 10 or 11 years ago and had the wonderful opportunity to join the advisory board of St. Herman House, which is how I initially got involved, and then 3 years ago to join the staff. So
So
I hope
this
that
is
answers your
another,
question.
no, it's fantastic. Look, this is another example. And I want people that are listening out there and I've talked to so many people as I've traveled the country who have said to themselves, I just feel like there's something in my heart that causes me to want to serve others and to help other people. And in a variety of different contexts. I mean, you've chosen some really challenging ones, but in a wide variety of contexts. And the reason why I'm so excited to have all four guests, but, starting with you and Father Justin, is that each of you have listened to God's call, have listened to the Holy Spirit inside of you saying, I want to do that. And for you to just attend a rubber chicken banquet, what we call these fundraising things, right? And then feel the inspiration to do that is a gift from the Holy Spirit. And that's a testament. So your life itself, the trajectory of your life and the ministries that you've been instrumental in helping, it really serve as an example to those that are wondering out there, gee, is there a place for me? Is there a calling for me? All right. So let's dig in a little bit more detail about St. Herman House and tell us about it and what you do and how you serve those in need, and just give us more information about it.
Sure. I'll also start with a little bit of background. As you said, we were founded in 1977, actually as an Orthodox Christian monastery in what was then a very poor part of the city of Cleveland, founded by an Orthodox monk and abbess to shelter and the homeless men and to feed the poor. And that ministry has continued to this day. In 2013, well, in 2011, it disbanded as a monastery. And in 2013, we became part of Focus North America, which, as your listeners may know, the Fellowship of Orthodox Christians United to Serve. And we're one of 6 Focus centers across the U.S. And what St. Herman's does is we have 6 program areas. We have a 28-bed men's shelter. So we provide emergency shelter to men. We also, we're located, just to help visualize it, we're located in an old house built in the 1880s in the Ohio City neighborhood of Cleveland. And the neighborhood has changed a lot in the last 40 plus years. It's gentrified a bit, but there is still a lot of poverty in our neighborhood and in surrounding neighborhoods.
Yeah.
So we have a 28-bed men's shelter in the original location. And then 3 doors down, we have a 12-room transitional house. The transitional house is for men who have a source of income and are looking to take a step towards independent living. So between the 2 buildings, we can house up to 40 men at a time. The other thing that we do is that we provide, pre-COVID, we were providing 3 hot meals a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. We were the only facility in the city that provided meals 3 times a day, 7 days a week.
That is amazing. That truly
is amazing. It really is.
Yeah.
It really is. In a normal year, we would provide, again, normal pre-pandemic.
Right.
It wasn't unusual to provide over 75,000 meals a year.
Oh, that's incredible.
And that's to anyone who comes to our door. And we have in our house, we have a dining room, and people would come in and sit down and have a meal. And that's a testament to the many, many, many volunteers that we have also that make that possible. So as with, as Father Justin said, we also are having to do to-go meals right now, but we are hoping, in the near future, because there's nothing like being able to come in and sit down. He talked, it's not just about meeting the food needs, which is a part of it, but it's also people's needs for connection and community, which is a little bit harder to do, when you're handing a to-go bag. Luckily, we have a big yard and we have a pavilion, and so people are able to sit outside and stay with us for a bit. So in addition to shelter and meals, we have a full-time case manager who provides case management to our residents. Many of our residents are dealing with trauma, mental illness, chronic medical conditions, substance use disorder. And we've shifted in the last few years to, as important as shelter is, we've realized that we want to do more than just provide a roof over someone's head. We really want to help give them the tools and to help support them, connect them to the resources that they need, so that, our goal is that when you leave St. Herman House, you are on a path to not return to homelessness.
Right.
So we're blessed to have a full-time case manager to support our residents. And she also it was interesting to hear Father Justin talk about IDs. We have the same issue, of course, and she also is able to provide identification services to the community, which there's a massive need for, as he said. We have a jobs and life skills program where we connect residents of the shelter to temporary employment opportunities. So it's really great. A lot of the churches, for their festivals, for example, will hire our residents to work the festival. And then this gives them a chance to get a paycheck and get some work experience, really important for people who've been out of the workforce and maybe are, need that boost of confidence. And it also helps us identify what are their needs and how are they going to need to be strengthened before they can go out and get a job. We provide basic needs to the community. So we provide sandwiches and hygiene items and grocery, and we have a men's clothing pantry. And then finally, we have a farm. We have a 75-acre farm, which is...
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to laugh, but that sounds so funny because we were talking about all of these incredible inner city services, and then the next word out of your mouth is, and we have a farm. So tell us about this incredible thing.
And not everyone's aware of it. We have a farm that's about an hour and 15 minutes east of Cleveland, and we're really excited about it. The most active thing we have happening on the farm right now is we have a beekeeping program. We have over 60 hives on that farm, two in our yard in Ohio City, and also at other locations. And we make honey. So residents... Our lead beekeeper is a resident of the shelter.
Fantastic.
So we make honey, and our long-term vision is to create a recovery ranch on the farm where men who are recovering from addiction would live and work on the farm for longer-term periods of time, 9 months, a year, on the path to recovery. So that was a lot, but that's an overview of what we're doing.
Well, those are 6 incredible services, all of which are actually, as you talk about, mission critical and very creative too. I mean, just the whole notion that you and Father Justin were talking about is, having the whole ID process, but also getting people, taking them from wherever they are and moving them to the next place, right? And not judging them, just loving and supporting them. And something you said something else that I think is so powerful, and I don't want to miss this, and that is the power of personal connection. Right. I mean, that's why, the COVID pandemic has a lot of tragedies associated with it. But one of them is the loss of intimacy that we have all been caused to feel. And anyone who's ever had an opportunity to work at some place or volunteer at some place like St. Herman's House or Reconciliation Services or any of them in your respective cities, you will change your life and your perspective when you actually sit and talk and interact with people and really hear their stories and whatnot. And I think God bless you all for being focused on that. And I hope that soon you return to that form of service, because I know it's a real integral part of what you do. So.
Thank you. It really is. That need for connection that we all have and relationship is just foundational. And yes, as important as everything else we do, even if it's less easy to quantify.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the things I want to encourage everybody to think about. Look, I'm kind of on this, small little mission here to get everybody to rethink how they interact with homeless people that they see or beggars that they see. And I want you to support them. I want you to help them, but I want you to also take the time to talk to them and hear their stories and engage with them on a personal level. And I will tell you that you will feel a gift in return far greater than whatever you share with them in the form of generosity. And that has been testified to by everyone I have ever spoken with who served in these kinds of ministries. Okay, so in the remaining few minutes that we have, I really want to ask you to share with everyone, how can people connect with your ministry and offer support or assistance or whatever else that they can do to help you on the incredible work that you're doing?
Sure. Well, the first thing I would say is to pray for us. Pray for the people that live in our shelter. Pray for the people that come to us for services, many of whom are unsheltered. Pray for those of us who work there, our volunteers. So keep us in your prayers. People in the Cleveland area, if we have listeners in Cleveland, by all means, reach out to us. We have hundreds of volunteers a year, and it's no exaggeration to say that we couldn't do what we do without volunteers. And as you just said, any one of our volunteers would say they get more out of volunteering than they give. And the relationship piece of it is so important to them. And of course, financial donations. I mean, we're very blessed to have Orthodox parishes and individuals supporting us, and always incredibly encouraged to receive donations from parishes and people who aren't in Cleveland. So yes, I would say those three things. And of course, if you want to follow us on social media, that would be great. Our web address is www.sthermans.org, with saint spelled out and an S at the end of Hermans. So sthermans.org. And all of our social media handles are at St. Hermans.
So that makes it easy to remember. And I really do want to challenge everybody here. There's nobody who listens to this program, and I don't care whether you're in the United States or in any of the foreign countries that listen in. You can do something to help these ministries. You can reach out to them through their social media and their internet web pages. You can donate to their services. And for all of the churches and parishes and organizations that are within a 2 or 3 hour radius of Cleveland, you can get up there and you can perform a ministry service support function. And if you'll take your youth groups up there and allow them to serve, you will do more for those young people and everybody that serves than you can ever possibly imagine. So again, Santi, I want to thank you so very much for all the incredible work that y'all do at St. Herman's House and all the other ministries that you are associated with. And God bless you for everything that you do. Okay.
Thank you so much.
All right. So we're going to take another short break right now. And when we return, I'm going to double up and have 2 guests coming in, Jennifer Hertberg and Dori Papadimitriou, and we're going to discuss some of the challenges of people who are suffering grief or challenges with homelessness and on the outside looking in, and some other ways that we can creatively serve these people and get you to think about how you can do it in your parishes. Remember, you're welcome to give us a call at 1-855-AF-RADIO. That's 1-855-237-2346. So let's take one last short break right now.
Bill will be right back. But the lines are open if you want to ask a question or offer your thoughts. The number is 855-237-2346. That's 855-AF-RADIO.
It began in 2004 with one streaming station playing Orthodox hymns and chants in many different languages, and a few talk programs and lectures as we could find them. About 10 years later, we added a talk channel and made the music channel, well, all music. Today, I'm pleased to announce a 3rd streaming channel on Ancient Faith Radio, introducing the English Language Music Channel. You now have 3 choices on the Ancient Faith app and website. Share the good news with your friends and family. And as always, thanks so much for your financial support that makes it all possible.
We praise God, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, for meet it is at all times to worship.
Stewardship Calling is back, and we are ready for your call at 855-237-2346. That's 855-AF-RADIO. Here again is Bill Marianis.
Welcome back to Stewardship Calling and our first Wednesday program, where my next special guests are Jennifer Hertberg and Dori Papadimitriou, and we're going to share some amazing information about grief and the ways and the different kinds and how we overcome it, and then another creative ministry opportunity that we really have available to you to offer, to support, as well as to potentially consider doing. And one thing that I forgot to mention earlier, so please forgive me right now, but it just so happens that Reconciliation Services, Father Justin Matthew, who I talked at the beginning of the program, is looking for a senior director of operations. It's kind of like a chief operating officer position. And so that's a great opportunity to work in a critical ministry. If you have any interest in that, you can reach out directly to Reconciliation Services. As we mentioned before, that's rs3101.org, or you can shoot me an email at bill@stewardshipcalling.com, bill@stewardshipcalling.com, and I'll connect you. So my next guest is an amazing young woman who I actually met at this conference at Phoenix. She's a 33-year-old dynamo who attends St. John the Baptist Greek Orthodox Church in Las Vegas. She, too, has a very diversified background with a bachelor's in music from the Musicians Institute in Hollywood with a focus in vocal performance, but she's also a certified grief recovery specialist through the Grief Recovery Institute, and at the same time is now wrapping up her MBA with a focus in leadership from Southern New Hampshire University. Again, and continuing in the eclectic interest area, she loves to play Dance Dance Revolution competitively, I might add, and is in love with her adorable cat, Tucker J, excuse me. But Jennifer also writes and records music and is currently working now as a deli clerk, but looking to climb the corporate ladder and serving other communities through affordable health and other wellness options. She's a founder of Uprooting Grief, which is an action-based program that's designed to equip people with tools that they need to complete the pain of their loss and regain joy. She's led many people through the grief recovery method into hopefully a better quality of life. And she's certified by the Grief Recovery Institute to teach, support, and counsel in one-on-one or in group settings. And as I said, I first met Jennifer at the YL retreat in Phoenix where I spoke, and she was one of the first young adults who came up to me after I finished as I sat there as a disheveled, homeless-looking beggar. But in speaking with her, I discovered that Jennifer explored many different paths thus far in her life and found that the sum of her experiences equipped her with a toolbox full of skills and knowledge. And she's really set a goal to work with businesses and leaders and managers to really create, better systems to give life to communities and serve other people in powerful ways. And I was really delighted to meet such a principle-led servant leader who in her own way has emerged victorious against a lot of impossible challenges and hardships more than anyone could ever know. And Jennifer, I want to welcome you and thank you for joining me right here on Stewardship Calling on Ancient Faith Radio.
Bill, it is such a pleasure. Thank you so much for thinking of me and having me.
Well, before we begin, I want to specifically express my sincere condolences for the recent passing of your grandfather, Colonel Edward Hertberg. I mean, your public tribute to him and his military and family legacy was actually quite beautiful. And for our listeners, when I reached out to Jennifer yesterday to see if she needed to be excused from tonight's program because of the loss of her grandfather, her answer was telling. She responded, let me quote, "Are you kidding me? This will make my sharing even better," end quote. So shared like a true steward, always willing to help others. So Jennifer, tonight you honor your grandfather, Colonel Hertberg, and by being here with us and sharing your wisdom and experience. And again, I thank you for being with us.
It truly is my pleasure. I feel like I'm in a place where God is really going to work in a very honest, raw, and vulnerable way through me. Yeah, and that's really important. Now, look, there are so many people, and many of them are listening right now and will hear the podcast later, that have been hurt, whether they're homeless or for whatever reason, or they found themselves on the outside looking in. They've had a tragedy that they've experienced, some significant grief in their life. Would you please share with our listeners a little bit about the journey and how you started to discover a calling that included grief counseling and the different aspects of grief counseling? Absolutely. I'll share some of the personal losses I've been through to kind of qualify that I can understand what grief is. But first and foremost, I want to teach that there are 43 different life events that can produce feelings of grief. And according to the Grief Recovery Institute, which has been around for multiple decades and has helped probably 1 million plus people to find the practical tools they need in order to walk through their grieving process and to find a completion with the relationship that they lost, so that they can regain the joy, that they can recover what happiness and being in the present moment and things that they lost as a result of the specific loss they experienced. According to the Grief Recovery Institute, the definition of grief is the conflicting mass of emotions that occur as the result of a change in or end of a familiar pattern of behavior.
Wait, say that again slowly, because when you first shared this with me, by the way, including the mind-blowing number of 43 different life events that create grief, I really took a while for me to wrap my head around it. So give us that definition again slowly, because I want everybody to listen carefully to what you're saying, and you'll understand the depth is so much greater than we ever thought.
All right. Absolutely. Grief is a conflicting mass of emotions. So usually when we're grieving the loss of something, we have a lot of positive emotions and negative emotions happening at the same time, which can make it very confusing to cope with. Personally, I am dealing with quite the large conflicting mass of emotions currently, with multiple grief events that have happened in the last month. A little bit, to be really honest and really vulnerable, I kind of feel like I'm spinning. And trying to hold on to some stability and really diving into God and just be present in the moment and allow myself to experience everything that's going on, and to think it through. It's been quite a roller coaster, if I might add. But okay, a conflicting mass of emotions that occur as the result of the end of or change in a familiar pattern of behavior. So when folks retire, let's say they go to their job and they say, I'm going to retire. They're no longer going to work. They're going to stay home and they have all the time in the world to do what they want. That is a huge change in behavior.
Right.
That is the end of a very familiar pattern of thinking, of planning, of relating with coworkers. It is such a huge loss, and it creates this huge open void. So many people struggle with the grief that comes after they retire, and many people will dive into finding other things they need to do to fill up that time for themselves, to try to fill up the loss. So conflicting mass of emotions, end of or change in a familiar pattern of behavior. And with that being said, there's multiple different life events that can produce those feelings. Some of the most common, obviously, are death and divorce.
Right.
On top of divorce is a breakup of a romantic relationship.
Yeah.
I don't know if anyone here has ever experienced a breakup, but there are certain large feelings that come with that. I personally had a breakup a couple of weeks ago. It was a very sudden breakup. I met this gentleman at a young adult conference in Dallas. First time we met, we talked multiple times. He was Christian. I felt like everything was on the same page with us. And then as soon as he dropped me off at my grandparents' house to go back to his home, something changed. And the next day he got weird, and he told me he loved me. He was looking forward to seeing me at the end of the month, and that he loved our weekend together, which included all the Orthodox divine liturgy and such. And then the next day he stopped talking to me and blocked me on Facebook for no reason, or for whatever reason. And then I had to find out through a mutual friend that he thinks we're on different paths and we won't work. So he totally abandoned me, just with no anything, no hearsay, whatever. And man, I tell you, that was a doozy.
That was a brick wall, man. You were speeding, and all of a sudden you hit a brick wall, didn't you?
I had no control over that at all. It was such a shock. It was such a loss automatically, and definitely there was a lot of anger there for me at the disrespect. There was a lot of fear. I feel like I've had trouble trusting my own perceptions and emotions and intuition. You know, I really thought we were solid, and I was opening myself up to trust him. And then, bam, it just felt like I had no idea who he was. And that, okay, well, can I trust my own feelings now going forward?
So that gets back to your confusing mass of emotions, right? From guilt to anger to hostility to lack of trust. And I mean, those are all swirling around that particular a tragedy in your life. And that's true of everyone that goes through that or other examples, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So there was also some positive there. When we walk people through the grief recovery method, you know, it's not just the negative. And there's only really 3 emotions. So for all you that are listening in,
wait, there's only 3 emotions?
There's only 3 well, okay, there's 4 emotions, but there's only 3 negative emotions.
Okay, all right.
And they can be extensions of those emotions, but they all really come down to 3 things. There's mad, sad, and scared.
Okay.
Mad, sad, and scared.
All right. That kind of rhymes. And I guess there's degrees of every one of those, but they're ultimately at their root 3 fundamental aspects.
Everything kind of falls into there. So you could say, oh, I'm feeling ashamed, but shame is not a feeling. If you were to pick those 3 items and say, okay, well, you feel like you're shamed, but what are the actual emotions you're experiencing?
Right.
You would say, okay, well, shame is probably a mix of fear and anger.
Yeah.
Or
you're
fear
mad
and
about
sadness.
something, you're scared about something, and the consequence of that is you feel ashamed.
Yes, or but shame is not itself a fear. Shame is a mix of some of the other emotions.
Gotcha.
So it really gets down to, okay, I'm feeling ashamed, which means I'm afraid that whatever happened has some meaning attached to it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm probably mad at whoever's shaming me, whether it's my own voice in my head, the devil trying to get me off my path, or someone else, some family member who's giving me a hard time.
Right.
So there's definitely the mix there. And then the other 4th emotion is glad, and then all the extensions that come with glad. So when we get into grief, we tend to like to complicate things. And the grief recovery method helps us hone in on, okay, there's 4 emotions. What are you feeling? Unfortunately, a lot of people have trouble connecting with their emotions, and simplifying it helps them to be able to be like, okay, I guess I'm scared, or I guess I'm angry, or I guess I really miss all the great things. I'm really thankful for the positive contributions they brought to my life, but I'm also really mad they kicked my dog.
Right.
So both kind of sides of that coin. Personally, with my grandfather passing, there was about 4 years of grief involved with this. My grandma had a stroke about 4 years ago and was therefore unable to take care of my grandfather anymore.
Right.
And once she had the stroke, we realized that my grandfather's been really suffering from dementia.
Yeah.
And he couldn't take care of himself with her no longer being able to take care of him. So I watched my father, who's the oldest of the children, burn himself out at both ends, selling their house, moving them all from Tucson, Arizona up here to Las Vegas, also working his pretty intense defense contractor job, as well as providing a home for all 3 of his kids and trying to help out with his grandchildren. So there was a loss of being able to rely on him for me, a real needing to grow up and stand on my 2 feet so that I could be able to help him.
Right.
So that I had something to offer him so I could be a support for him. And it's really forced me to lose that support I felt I had because he didn't really have it to offer anymore.
Right.
It also broke my heart watching my grandfather decline with the dementia and his loss of bodily control, his loss of memory, watching my grandma kind of wither away too, and losing those relationships and all the memories that came with that. And then now my dad is planning the funeral. And after, when I was the one that got the call, and it was the first time I'd ever actually seen a dead body or touched a dead body. And it was hugely profound for me to see the body without any life energy or life source in it.
Right.
My dad's like, you want to come? And I was like, of course I want to come.
Yeah.
And then one of the most, it was so beautiful and so heartbreaking at the same time. And I'm still trying to process that, like the beauty of acknowledging how real the life force is in our bodies, how real we are, this unique spiritual creation, and how we are the sum of both our body and that spirit. It was so beautiful to witness that, to touch it. And then it was also incredibly beautiful to watch my father and my uncle pour their heart out in love and gratitude. One of the things my aunt said was, "Thank you for everything. You did so good."
Right.
Thank you for our lives. You did so well. And my dad was crying, and he was saying the same thing. He was like, he was such a good parent. He was such a good parent. Like, they just had so much love, so much gratitude. So for anyone else listening out there, you may be struggling with a lot of pain. You may not feel safe to talk to people. And that's an unfortunate reality about grief in our life. is that we tend to not have safe places or people who are safe for us to open up and be honest with. A lot of times we feel like people want to fix us. They want to provide a solution.
Yeah. And listen, let me just jump in there to say, I am certainly understanding how unhelpful that is as someone who myself has always tried to think of myself as a fixer. And I would look at people going through grief and going, wait, why aren't you appreciating that I'm trying to fix the problem? And they're kind of going, you don't get it, do you? Right. And so this grief recovery method that you're talking about that really is trying to lead to a better quality of life is really starting to work through those different, the three different emotional parts of that and the different types of grief in order to get to a better place. So talk about some of the elements. So you talk about having that ability to share the grief. Is that one of them that you think is critical?
Well, we have a step-by-step process. It's a very well-structured program, and it's very simple. And I think it's amazing to me how all the people I've walked through this 8-week class or this course, of actual work where they're getting busy taking the correct actions in order to complete the grieving process and become complete with the relationship that they lost. Because grief really is a lot of unfinished business. It's a lot of unexpressed.
Amen. Say that again. That is so powerful.
Grief is unfinished business.
Yeah.
It is unexpressed emotional communications that are significant to you.
Right.
It's the things you didn't say. It's the dreams and hopes you had that didn't realize. It is the regrets you have for how you behaved. It's the things
or didn't behave, right? Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. The things you wish you had done different, better, or more. The things you wish the relationship had been different, better, or more. And that's another important thing is all grief is relational. All grief is relational.
That is a powerful concept too, right? I mean, because it's not this academic exercise that just happens in your brain that you can process, right?
Yes, you have to feel the feelings.
Yeah.
And you can't think feelings. You have to feel them. An emotion, the definition of an emotion is a physical reaction to a thought.
Okay.
A physical reaction. So we really help people understand how physical grief is. I don't know if anyone here has ever had bad news and felt like they got punched in the gut.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Yeah.
Or even felt choked up in their throat.
Yeah, we have all these phrases that actually describe the physicality of it, don't we?
Absolutely, and it's exhausting.
Yeah.
It's emotionally exhausting, especially because emotions take up tons of energy. Yeah. And they take up the physical energy. So we help people understand help people look at all the ways they've coped with grief that haven't worked. We talk about the 6 myths of grief that our society tends to teach us work. It may provide temporary relief, but not actually heal. Mm-hmm. Those are some fascinating ones. Something like, just don't feel bad.
Yeah, like that. That's easy, right?
How about, I just lost my relationship. Don't feel bad, honey. You're a great catch. You'll find another one.
Yeah, right.
Okay, great. Yeah. Thanks for just telling me not to feel bad. Replace the loss. Go find another boyfriend. That'll just fix it.
Yeah.
Or what else? Time heals all wounds. No. I don't know how many of you have ever lost a parent or a pet or, heaven forbid, a child.
Yeah.
20 years later, and it still hurts to think about that person. You would think time would heal that if time healed all wounds. But that's not time's job.
That's not time's job. That's right. Yeah.
Okay. So what are the other ones? Grieve alone.
I don't get that.
Grieve alone. Yeah. We're relational people. What's the first thing you want to do? What's the first thing you want to do when you get good news?
Yeah, you want to celebrate with somebody and you want to hug somebody when they're getting bad news, right? I mean,
and what's the first thing you want to do when something bad happens to you?
Yeah, you got to share. You got to share it.
Talk about it.
Yeah.
We're relational, we want to connect. We want to be understood. We want to be seen. We want to be known. And those are good things that God created us for.
Right.
So be strong for others is another myth.
Yeah.
If I just be strong and not feel my feelings, then somehow they'll go away. Yeah, well, that doesn't really
That
work
doesn't work.
either.
Right. Yeah.
And then my favorite one, keep busy.
Yeah. Let's trick ourselves into thinking we don't have a problem, right? We're not in pain.
Or if you run away from the tidal wave fast enough, it'll never consume you.
Yeah. Yeah.
You'll never have to feel it. So that's another thing we do. And we also walk people through STIRBs, which are short-term energy relieving behaviors. I don't know about you, but my favorite short-term energy relieving behavior when I'm experiencing emotions of grief is coffee.
Now, wait a minute. Now, wait a minute. Now you're fixing the meddling right over here, okay? As a coffee addict who can easily drink 20 cups a day, are you telling me that this is me dealing with grief, or what's the story here?
I don't know what's going to happen if you stop drinking coffee.
Oh, I would just go. I would fall apart. I think I'm addicted. I must confess. That's
pretty common.
Yeah,
Food is the number one short-term energy relieving behavior.
Right.
We use it to temporarily stop feeling our feelings, to fix something in our body.
Or to medicate, to medicate ourselves through something, right? I mean, a doctor once explained to me that part of the reason why I drink so much coffee is because I'm ADHD. I'm self-medicating my own ADD behaviors, right? But nevertheless, the intake of the food that you take is medicine to your body. It's the source of your body's energy, so it's not hard to understand how you would use food as a crutch in the grief context.
Definitely. And then what else? Video games, sex, drugs. Fitness, people love to work out when they're having a grieving experience. These are all ways we try to relieve the amount of emotional energy that we're physically experiencing as a result of grief. And then what's next after that? Okay, so STIRBs, we've got the 6 myths of grief. We've got intellectual comments. This is huge.
Wait, you say that again? Intellectual what?
Intellectual comments.
Comments, okay.
This is huge for everyone listening. All right, so a study was done in the early 1990s of 200 people within 72 hours of a significant loss for these people. They found that within those 72 hours, every single person heard probably around 190 different comments that others made to them. Out of those 190 comments, only about 16 were helpful.
Wow.
Because the rest all come from a place of your head. You can't fix your heart with your head.
Right.
How many times have you tried to fix your feelings by thinking it away?
Yeah.
Or by rationalizing it?
So you're saying the vast majority of the things that we say, while maybe intellectually, smart, aren't going to be helpful.
Yes. Okay. How many? Okay. Let's have some examples, some really good examples, and one really stupid one. So the first example is, God doesn't give you any more than you can handle.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Okay. That may be true, but that doesn't make me feel better.
Mm-hmm.
Or he's in a better place. Yeah, that may be true, but that doesn't mean I don't miss him like crazy.
Right.
Or I'm mad that he left me with a giant pile of debt.
Right.
Or what else is there? Like when people tell you what to do to fix it, those can be more intellectual comments.
Yeah.
And then okay, you can find another boyfriend or girlfriend. Yeah, that may be intellectually true, but that's not helpful.
Right.
And then here's a really good one. You can always have another child.
Yeah. Good luck with that. Yeah. Good luck with that making up for the loss, right?
Yeah, that's a perfect example of how, yes, that could totally 100% be true. Intellectually, 100% could be true.
Right.
But how emotionally helpful is that?
Yeah, not at all. Not at all.
So we teach people.
Yeah. What do
sorry,
you? Yeah.
Ahead.
What is the right way to do it? What should we be doing in those contexts?
Okay. Well, one of the greatest ways to help a grieving person is to let them know that you really don't understand what they're going through. Mm-hmm. You don't. No.
Yeah.
You don't. It's really, really not helpful to tell them, I know how you feel, because you don't know how they feel.
Yeah.
You have not lived their life. You have not experienced what they've experienced. You have not experienced the puzzle pieces that have all led them to this point where they're having these reflections, where they're going through the past, the whole relationship that just ended, where they're questioning themselves and looking at all the ways they wish they had done better. You don't know that. You don't. What you can do for them is listen. I'm here for you. How can I help you? Something along the lines of, wow, I can't imagine what this is like for you, because you can't. And usually when you say that to someone, they'll tell you what it's like.
Yeah. I bet that's right. Yeah.
Another great way to help is to paraphrase back what you hear, but do it in a way where you're acknowledging what the person's feeling. Like, someone may go on and on. She's like, wow, it sounds like you're really scared. Wow, it sounds like that was really painful for you. And more than anything, hugs.
Shut up and
Hugs
listen.
help.
Yeah.
Shut
Hugs.
up and listen.
Okay. Yeah.
Offer hugs, but you always ask permission first, and don't ever pat the person on the back.
Oh, wait a minute now. Come on. That's the sports training that everybody's got now, right?
Cool. Well, let's have a really good example here. So a well-meaning older woman comes up to you, oh, now, and pats you on the back.
Yeah.
Doesn't that not feel dismissive?
Yeah, that's pretty. Yeah, I get it now. I get it. It seems natural in the moment, but I can see how it's really not helpful.
It can be very dismissive. Okay, stop your feeling now.
Right.
Okay, that's enough feeling.
Yeah, here you go, sweetie. It'll be okay now. It'll be okay.
Okay, you're good. Go on. I patted you on the back, gave you a hug. Now it's time for you to be better.
Right.
So that's not helpful. A warm embrace, which is real natural, a nice little hug. You're not going to spaghetti someone, and you're not going to bear hug someone.
Right.
But just to really acknowledge that they're a human being having a very human experience, because we all lose. We're all going to lose.
Yeah.
We're going to lose everything. That is reality.
Right.
We're going to lose everything. If we're lucky, and if we work hard, and if we are faithful, then we will have Christ. And he's ultimately all we have. Him and ourselves is all we have. So learning how to grieve and learning how to lose is so important. And it's been absolutely amazing for me to learn how to lose and grieve in my own life, and tremendously rewarding to help empower other people with the correct information and tools they need so that they know how to grieve and they can go forward with greater boldness and less fear and more confidence that they can face whatever life throws at them.
Yeah, and I think this is what's so powerful, and kind of how it all connects, is that as you talk with anyone who is either homeless or addicted or who has truly been ostracized and is on the outside looking in, what you will almost inevitably find is that there is a grief-inducing event that occurred in their life. There was a mass of emotions that occurred as a result of a change of a familiar pattern of behavior or some traumatic event that happened in their life, and it set them on a trajectory. And rather than receiving those beneficial supportive tools that you talked about, they just kind of spiraled on their own. And if they didn't do something really horrible to themselves, they either became addicted or they set themselves on a path. And so ultimately, if we can understand, back to your point, the humanity of the relational nature of that we have with everybody around us, and we can serve them in a more loving and compassionate and relational manner, then we can actually start to address some of those fundamental issues that are dealing with them. So we only have a few seconds left, but I want is there a way that any of our listeners who would like to learn more about this, or maybe experiencing grief themselves or know others that are in pain, what are some of the resources or places that you can recommend where they can learn more and receive some of the assistance that they need, Jennifer?
All right. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to share these resources. First of all, the Grief Recovery Institute. There are certified grief recovery specialists all over this country. And there are also grief recovery specialists that can work through the internet. That is an absolutely great tool. I highly recommend working through the grief recovery method. I have done it 4 times, and I continue to use the tools regularly throughout my life, and they continue to work and continue to unload my bucket of grief throughout my life and make things lighter. When I'm not carrying around a stack of rocks anymore.
Right.
And then also, you can buy the Grief Recovery Handbook on Amazon. It's a pretty great deal. You can walk through the program yourself. There is a way to do that. However, I highly recommend doing it either in a group setting or with a grief recovery specialist. You're also welcome to contact me, and I would be more than happy to share my resources with you. You can contact me at uprootinggrief@gmail.com.
Say it again slowly. Say it. You talk as fast as I do, so say it again slowly so that everybody can catch it.
All right. So my job is to uproot the grief in your heart so you can be free from that pain that is stuck in there. So my business is uprooting grief. Ripping those weeds out. Ripping those weeds out so you can be free of it.
Yeah.
So my email is uprootinggrief@gmail.com.
All right.
You can also find me on Facebook. I have a page, Uprooting Grief, where I will post more regular things about my business. And again, you can just contact me, and I'm happy to share whatever experience, strength, hope, and wisdom I have, and at least provide a heart with yours. Thank you so much, Bill.
Fantastic. And I really appreciate your coming and sharing these insights that honestly all of us need and all of us need to get better at, not only, just with the source of those that may be homeless or in need or on the outside looking in, but even in our own personal and relationships. I'm thinking of several people right now that I need to change the way I'm interacting with. So Jennifer, thank you so much for all that you're doing and all that you will continue to do. And I know that you will have a great and glorious and bright future serving the Lord. And I'm so grateful to God that I got a chance to meet you and have you share your great resources. So thanks so much. And God bless you.
God bless you, Bill. Thank you.
All right. So now we're going to take a final shift here to something that is also an equally exciting, another extraordinary ministry that is making a difference in the kingdom and something that you can be around and support. I'm going to introduce you to Dori Papadimitriou, who's always been passionate about two things: art and social change. And you might not have thought those go together, but she grew up in Toledo, Ohio, and earned a Bachelor of Fine Arts from Bowling Green State University, and then moved to Boston to begin a career in creative design and art direction. She worked in the fashion industry. She art directed national and international ad campaigns, including ones for famous brands like Louis Vuitton and Legal Seafood and Infinity. And while raising her children and living abroad, she wrote and illustrated 4 children's books and began working in community arts programs. I mean, you're starting to see that all 4 of my guests here are all these Renaissance people that have done so many incredible things. Dori has served as a curator of the Noyes Museum of Art in Stockton University, creating hundreds of exhibitions of nationally and internationally recognized artists. And she always believed that art is transformative. And she began implementing programs for people in need through the boys' clubs and girls' clubs of Atlantic City, after-school students in Pleasantville, and residents in senior and assisted living centers, stroke and brain injury patients, and others that are actually serving people. But the interesting thing that I really found fascinating about her was that in 2016, Dori founded Mud Girls Studios, which is all about empowering women and transforming lives through art that creates functional pottery in everyday use. So Mud Girls is a nonprofit 501c3 organization, and they really celebrate a love of clay and the creative process and providing a chance for women to transform their lives. And their really aim is to assist chronically unemployed women through transitional employment by offering those in need an opportunity to engage and generate a source of income. So Mud Girls Studios provide stepping stones to a better future and a stronger community. And they recently completed tile installations at Stockton University, New Brunswick Performing Arts Center, and currently working on a project at the Hudson Yards in Manhattan. Dori was also the president of our Philoptical Society, the Friends of the Poor at Holy Trinity Greek Orthodox Church, and served as a board member of Haven Beat the Streets, which provides transitional housing for people in need, and is a member of the Atlantic County Women's Advisory Board. So whenever you purchase a handmade ceramic through Mud Girls Studios, or you donate, you actually help women transition onto a pathway towards self-sufficiency and out of poverty. So Dori, it's so great. Thank you for sticking around and being here on Stewardship Calling on Ancient Faith Radio.
Hi, Bill. Thank you for having me. I'm so grateful to follow the other guests you had on who were just so doing amazing work across the country. So thank you so much.
Well, now you two have an amazing life story and personal journey and kind of how you got into your current position. And I kind of highlighted some of the facts and figures, but give us a little bit of color commentary on that.
Okay, well, you covered just about everything, but I'll give you some the path to where I am now. I started out as a graphic designer and really have always loved anything related to art and creative making. So I really thought that corporate design was where I wanted to be, and I did that work for out of college. And one of my first jobs was in the fashion industry in Boston, and I was working on a photo shoot in the middle of Copley Square in Boston.
Oh,
and
I love
so
that
we
place.
had models. Yeah, it was beautiful. We had models and hair and makeup people. So we were doing a photo shoot with, and it was actually for fur coats. So here we are with the models and the cameras. It was kind of a glamorous situation. So we're focusing on the beautiful models. Meanwhile, a homeless person or a person from the street came up to me. He had his face was sort of badly burned, and he was disfigured. And he looked at me and he said, "Well, what about me?" And so at that moment, the contrast of what we were doing and focusing on this really unimportant for a photo shoot, and then looking at this man who was really, just as important as anyone, but pretty much not noticeable, right? Sort of someone who people don't really pay attention to. So that was a moment that has stayed with me for 30 years, and I think it's something that has never left me. And so, interestingly, I find myself now caring for people like that man from that time in my life. And so back to how I came to where I am right now. So I guess doing graphic design and art, I always wanted to use sort of my gifts in a positive way, and to going back to that man, to affect change, right? To make a difference. And so after I worked in the museum for a number of years, I raised my children, and I said I had this idea of a clay studio that could work with, with homeless people, homeless women, and give them a chance, create community, give them a chance to make and express and enjoy themselves. And at the same time, offer them a source of income by making home goods and tableware that we would sell and that they would earn money from, so that they could feel empowered, feel self-confident, and also help themselves onto a better life. So Mud Girl Studios was formed in 2016. We started at a day shelter that is a place where women gather to be off the street. So we just started there with a block of clay and some tools, and from there, everything sort of just unfolded, and the path unfolded, and I just followed, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, this is such. I'm still staggered by the expression that man asked you, "What about me?" And it just honestly, that's kind of sums it up in three short but powerful words. What these people that we see every day but don't really see every day are essentially wanting to know, what about me? And what, how can you help me? And how can you help me not just give me something, but how can you help me get better? So share with everybody some of the incredible things that you do at Mud Girl Studios. Well,
I think Chrysanthi mentioned that it was a connection to community that was really important for some of the things they do at St. Hermas House. And I think that's also something that we do. We create community in the studio by just being together, by sharing food. And then Jennifer was talking about hugs and things like that. So, and, there's a lot of hugging going on in our studio. We really support each other. We are kind of like a family in the studio. A lot of these women really have no other, community or family, and we create that in the studio. So that's a really important thing I think we do. We also try and assist our women onto other social services, onto perhaps more permanent employment. Mud Girls is employment for some who we don't really see, who may not go on to other employment, so they kind of stay with us as our artisans. But for others who are looking for more full-time and employment, we assist them to that end as well.
Yeah, I think, and I want everybody to take a chance, or not take a chance, take some time and go to mudgirlsstudios.org. It's just like it sounds, right? And when I first met Dory and I said, so what do you do? She goes, I work on Mud Girls Studio. I'm going, what did you just say? But it is, it's MUDGIRLS studios.org. And you can not only see that sense of community, even in their cute little logo, but but look at some of the beautiful, beautiful things that they create there. These that truly are artistically beautiful as well as functionally useful. And I got to believe that the women now who came from points in their lives where they didn't necessarily see that sense of meaning and purpose can feel really proud about what y'all do. Isn't that a big part of it?
Absolutely, absolutely. We're very, very much acknowledged in the community here, and you can see our work in several institutions locally, as well as kind of across New Jersey. And when they see the work and when they're congratulated publicly, they just they really feel very accomplished. And I think that puts them in a situation where they have not often been sort of the focus of success, So it's really a great accomplishment. I think they're really proud to be part of Mud Girls and having it be, a really big part of their lives.
Yeah, and I think what was powerful was when I kind of look at your little tagline, empowering women, transforming lives through art. And just like we featured the great work that St. Herman's House is doing with men, we can feature the great work that you're doing, with women, and obviously RS is working across the spectrum over there.
Right,
now, Dory, here's the thing. I mean, I can see how what you're doing with Mud Girls is the kind of thing that can scale up and be transformational in multiple communities. I mean, there's got to be a way that we can take your great vision and the work that you've done with Mud Girls and make it a ministry that other parishes and communities can embrace. I mean, is that something that ultimately you wouldn't mind seeing happen?
We have had some discussions about satellite Mud Girls locations. We are talking about that in Florida, actually, at the moment, and another place here in New Jersey. We're trying to figure out the details of how that could work, but we certainly feel that if we can give someone a positive experience through making and sharing and expressing, then we'd be more than happy to try and work out how that could happen and for more people. I mean, I think that's the beauty of it. We've just started something very small here, and it's grown and it's kind of taken a life of its own. And if we can help more women or help more people, I think that would be a beautiful thing. So,
all right. Well, now I need you to share with everybody how they can connect with you or the ministry and what kind of support and assistance they can offer you.
We have beautiful handmade, one of a kind items on our website. Actually, we're launching a new Christmas collection that will be up in the middle of November. So stay tuned for some brand new pieces to come onto our website. But please share us on your social media. It's mudgirlsstudios.org is our website. Share us, like us, and tell your friends about us, and spread the word. And if you'd like to support us by purchasing something on our site, that every purchase helps a woman in need. We are a nonprofit, and everything we do goes back to helping the women and improving the programs. So So that would be wonderful, and we'd be grateful. And thank you so much.
Well, and no offense to the Amazons of the world, but I mean, how many times do you get a chance to actually buy something that is beautiful, that is handcrafted, and is actually helping someone in a very direct and tangible way? And so I want to thank you, Dory, for the incredible work you're doing at Mud Girl Studios. I hope everybody will take a look at what you have to offer in the holiday collection. Let's get that up there, because I got to get my holiday shopping done. Okay. And I know of no better way to do it than through Mud Girl Studios. And thank you, and God bless you for all the work you do, helping the women, not only in New Jersey, but hopefully beyond. So thank you so much, and God bless you.
Thank you. Thank you, Bill. Thank you so much.
Well, listen, we certainly use more than our usually allotted time, and yet barely started to discuss some of the critical issues of homelessness and people in need and grief and all those people that are on the outside looking in. But let me try and wrap it up with a few final thoughts and a critical announcement. So first and foremost, I want to specifically thank my special guest, Father Justin Matthews of Reconciliation Services, and Santa Luisa's of St. Herman's House, and Dori Papadimitriou of Mud Girl Studios, and Jennifer Hertberg and the great work that she's doing in the grief counseling. I also always have to do a big shout out of thanks for the amazing and courageous Matuska Trudy Richter, who's my show producer in Chesterton, Indiana, and the assistant station manager at Ancient Faith Radio, who makes all of this possible. But I want you to please pay close attention to something that's coming up on December 1st, this year, the December 1st Ancient Faith Radio Stewardship Calling Program. Now, December 1st may not necessarily mean anything to you yet, but trust me on this one. By then, you will be hearing nonstop how significant that day will become in America. And you might be asking yourself why, and the answer is one word, and perhaps one of the most divisive words in America today, and it begins with the letter A. And if you haven't guessed it yet, the word is abortion. Yeah, you heard that right. On the December 1st Stewardship Calling live program here on Ancient Faith Radio, we are going to tackle the very difficult and touchy issue of abortion on the very day that the United States Supreme Court will be hearing oral arguments in the Dobbs versus Jackson Health Organization case coming from Mississippi that might overturn or change Roe versus Wade and Planned Parenthood of Southeastern Pennsylvania versus Casey, which are the two principal Supreme Court decisions that opened the door for legal abortions in America. Since 1973, when Roe versus Wade was decided, the United States Supreme Court declared a new right and struck down a Texas law back then. And the ruling made abortion legal in many circumstances, but it also ruled that this right is not absolute and has to be balanced against the government's interest in protecting women's health and protecting prenatal life. And 48 years later, Roe versus Wade continues to be one of the most controversial and hotly contested legal decisions. And in this term of the United States Supreme Court, that decision will be revisited, and the oral argument's going to take place on December 1st. And so what are we going to do here on Stewardship Calling on that very day regarding this contentious issue? Well, we're going to look at abortion from the Orthodox Christian perspective. We're going to explore abortion theologically with the assistance of my dear friend and priest, Father Barnabas Powell. We'll explore two amazing Orthodox ministries that are focused on helping women deal with some of the difficult decisions regarding unwanted pregnancies and understanding options that are available to them. You're going to hear from Paula Capos of Zoe for Life and Emily Wilkinson from the Orthodox Christians for Life. And finally, I'm going to humbly attempt to explain the legal side of abortion and the Roe and Casey decisions, as well as the Dobbs case briefs and arguments in a way that may make it a little bit easier to understand, both from a purely legal perspective, but also from an Orthodox legal perspective, because the Assembly of Canonical Orthodox Bishops filed an amicus brief before the United States Supreme Court in the Dobbs case that's going to be heard on December 1st. So we'll take respectful callers and engage in respectful dialogue, but we're really hoping to present information and that perhaps somebody hasn't ever heard before, and ask people to prayerfully use their God-given gift and their intellect to understand an Orthodox Christian perspective on abortion. So I don't think this is a program you're going to want to miss. So that's December 1st, our first Wednesday program. If, by the way, you find these first Wednesday and fifth Sunday programs helpful or informative, please tell your friends about it and tune in live, or you can always check out the archived versions of this that are posted a couple of days after the program. You can find them either by going to Ancient Faith Radio Live tab and scroll down to today's date, which is November 3rd, 2021, or you can go to my Stewardship Calling website and there's an internet radio tab. And again, you can just scroll down to the November 3rd, 2021 date for today's program. And you're always invited to check out any of the other free resources at stewardshipcalling.com. And if you have any questions or you want to reach out to any of the guests tonight, please email me at bill@stewardshipcalling.com and let me know what you're thinking. And if you have any questions or if we can be of any assistance to you or your parish. I ask you to please remember that two of the most important days of your life are first, the day you were born, and second, the day you figure out why. And if you haven't already started to live your stewardship calling, please begin prayerfully discerning your why and stewardship calling, and then start living the most extraordinary second part of your life. Thank you for listening. God bless you. As always, I pray that you SOTPAETJ, which stands for stay on the path, capital T, capital P, and enjoy the journey. God bless and good night.